you used to be in the mainstream and now you're really independent. And I don't talk to many people that have seen both sides and experienced maybe the ups and downs of both sides. You left, I think, CBS in 2014, so that was 10 years ago. What can you tell people about the difference between those two worlds? I think back in 14, nobody had any idea that maybe the mainstream media wasn't 100% factual. I might argue that in the last 4 years, some people might believe that, but I would still say a lot of people, including people in this country, they turn on the BBC and it is gospel, especially if you're over 50. It just is. Tell me, what was it like on both sides, and what can you tell people about that mainstream?
Well, I think as an investigative reporter at CBS, I was on the leading edge of discovering a big shift in trends in mainstream media. The shift in trends had to do, I've written books that you named on all of this stuff, there's a lot that goes into it, but had to do with it becoming the animal that it is today from what we thought of the news media for many decades as being. And I think I noticed the conflicts of interest, the editorial issues, the lack of honesty, maybe ahead of everybody else, although my colleagues were complaining about the same things. But as an investigative reporter, my work tended to be work that saw the most impact from this editorial interference early on. And I think I got out at a great time. When I left CBS, I quit ahead of my contract because I had tried to operate in this, I felt like it was a dishonest environment for a couple of years. Had a great career for many, many years at CBS, but there were key figures inside the network that started to have editorial control over matters that they shouldn't in inappropriate ways, dishonest ways. And this was happening at the other networks too. So I thought I was going to get out of the business. I'm leaving CBS. Who's going to hire me? I'm speaking out about what's wrong with the industry. And then this independent opportunity came up. I didn't really want to jump into another job, but within a year I was ready to take on this weekly show. And I've enjoyed a great deal of independence that I used to have at CBS and CNN and PBS. In fact, my colleagues, when they see what we report on Full Measure, I often hear, how do they let you report that? And it's just ordinary reporting, factual reporting and in-depth reporting on issues that everybody would have done 15, 20 years ago that people aren't doing anymore. And my answer is they allow us to do it here. They don't have that top-down editorial interference. So the difference is drastic and in a good way. And I don't think I've experienced any downsides I can think of offhand about being on an independent show.
Did you feel that coming on, like if you go back to like 94, 2004, up to 2014, did it slowly become more and more pervasive, that control? And do you think that correlated with, advertising dollars or specific companies with advertising dollars on the network?
Yes, it started to bleed in the early 2000s. The first impact I noticed was with the pharmaceutical industry interfering in the news industry. I later learned, only with the benefit of hindsight, that the media outlets in America were lobbying side by side with the pharmaceutical industry, lobbying Congress to make direct-to-consumer ads more common and acceptable. This is prescription drug advertising on TV. A lot of people watching may not remember or know it was illegal in the US, as it is in most every other country, until a certain time period. And once it became where the drug companies were able to sponsor newscasts and buy network television programming and so on, I think that was sort of the key moment where we began to change, and they were invited to have undue influence on our reporting. At the time, all the networks and the major publications were reporting on prescription drug dangers and inappropriate things. That almost came to a halt. And again, looking back, I can see the timeline, which is clear, but when I was in the middle of it, I was being assigned to cover these stories on the one hand, and at some point I began feeling pressure only from certain corners of the network to not do those stories, while I was encouraged by my direct supervisors to do them. So it was sort of a confusing time. Looking back, I now see what was happening in the timeline with the financial conflicts.
It's interesting because if you run a big organization like that, you must have to kind of massage it, because you can't come tell your editors that they can't cover the news, because then your editors will revolt, right? Proper news people won't be told what to do. So they probably had to find ways of discouraging it, trying to get you to not do those things. And that must have been a weird, conflicted organization.
You portray it very accurately. I was never told that the stories weren't awesome. I broke a lot of news, like that Viagra can cause blindness. That was one big international story that I broke. Or stories about the dangers of statin drug, cholesterol-lowering drugs that were being hidden by the drug makers and so on. But the stories were always got a lot of accolades in terms of industry recognition, and my direct supervisors who asked for the stories and appreciated when I would break these stories. But yes, there came a point in time when I would start to feel what I call the big chill. And it's hard to describe because, again, no one ever said the stories weren't terrific. They said quite the opposite. But it came to be toward the end of my time there, the last couple of years, a lot of stories still aired, but many stories, I would say more good stories were left on the cutting room floor, as they say. And it was never because they weren't good. They were approved by our legal department and all the people up the chain. But I was told things like, this story is so good, we're going to save it for next week. And then next week would come, and it's like, maybe tomorrow we have breaking news that has to air today. And I called it death by 1,000 cuts. I could tell the story was, at some point you can tell the story's never going to air. And they're never going to say why. They're going to just tell you it's such a great story, but it never airs.
Hey, I know investing in crypto is scary. It takes a real leap of faith because there are so many scams, rug pulls, and bad actors out there. It's a dangerous business, which is why 95% of people lose all their money. Well, that's why I created the London Real Investment Club, so you can access the hottest deals on the planet and use the crypto bull market to create the generational wealth that you deserve. Join my team of over 100 people from around the world that are making millions of dollars behind the scenes investing in blockchain, AI, Web3 games, DeFi, Bitcoin, and more. Don't miss out. Click the link below to book a call with one of my team now. But hurry, this bull market will end soon.
I know investing in crypto can be scary. That's why you gotta join the investment club. Pull the trigger. Let's do this.